The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV, series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the Deep Space Nine episode, Battle Lines. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
Very well, thanks. And Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, be sure to follow The Secrets of Star Trek in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts from, including at the Star Quest YouTube channel, where you should also make sure to hit the bell to get notifications of new episodes. And another show on the network that I'm sure you'll enjoy if you subscribe is called Secrets of Technology, where we talk about the technology news that's important to you from a uniquely Catholic point of view. And you can find that also wherever fine podcasts are found, or at sqpn.com/technology. So we are talking about this Deep Space Nine first season episode called Battle Lines. And Jimmy, can you give us a recap of what happens?
Pope John Paul II comes to the station because of a private revelation of the Virgin Mary. Kai Opaka, the original good Kai, comes to the station because of private revelations from the prophets. She keeps it to herself, but she knows that she won't be going back to Bajor. Sisko indulges her desire to see the wormhole, and they take a runabout through into the Gamma Quadrant for a 3-hour tour. A 3-hour tour. But the space weather starts getting rough when a satellite defense system around a moon attacks them, and the tiny ship is not only tossed, it crash lands on the planet, and the Kai is killed in the crash, but she mysteriously comes back to life. It turns out that the moon is a prison colony where an unknown alien race has confined 2 tribes of their people as punishment for their continual warfare with each other. Sisko is willing to transport the prisoners off-world when rescue comes from the station, but the leaders of the warring tribes hate each other so much that they don't take the offer seriously. Turns out their race's attitude was, if y'all enjoy continual warfare with each other so much, you can have it forever. So they seeded the planet with artificial microbes that will repeatedly bring them back to life. But to keep them on the planet, the microbes will die, and so will their hosts if they're taken off the moon. This means that Sisko can't take either the prisoners or the Kai off the moon. And the Kai is okay with that, though, because she recognizes it as the will of the prophets to have her stay on this moon and help the 2 warring tribes start moving beyond their mutual hatred. The end.
So, I want to start by kind of mentioning just how the contrast between Kai Opaka and Kai Wynn. Like, they're polar opposites. Opaka is beloved. Everyone leaps to greet her when she arrives. You know, whenever Kai Wynn shows up on the station eventually, it's like you can see Sisko and Nerys both like kind of cringe. Oh, gosh. Yep. So it's kind of, I mean, Kai Wynn is better for the drama, but man, she's annoying. I really like Opaka.
This is like only the second time now. This is the second time Kai Opaka appears, and it's other than the pilot episode, which she's barely in. This is the only episode where she plays a significant role, and it's the only time we see her in the flesh in the series after the pilot. She will appear like in a couple of orb visions, but that's it. And we never see her again, even though she says at the end of this one, your pa and mine will cross again. Well, they don't, which is really unfortunate because this is a good character. I like Kai Opaka a lot, and it's unfortunately we introduce her in the pilot and we get this episode, and so it's like, hello, I must be going.
Yeah.
And it's just such an opportunity lost. There's so much they could have done with this character. That they didn't. I mean, imagine her being around for like the end of first season conflict with Keiko O'Brien about are the prophets gods or just wormhole aliens? Right. You know, Opaka wouldn't have been the shrieking fundamentalist that Wynn was. and as challenging as it might be for someone, would have come up with a way of holding both, aspects of the question in tension with each other. And it would have been so much more interesting than shrieking fundamentalist versus enlightened Starfleet person.
Right.
Right.
And there are loads of other things that could have been done, because Opaka is a fundamentally good character. And that means that she is in the same position as the main cast in struggling with a problem. You have weekly antagonists coming on here, but having the Bajoran spiritual leader, at least for a while, for a couple of, say 3 seasons, having her be in the same position as the main cast in trying to solve a problem would be very interesting. And then the sacrifice of the character would have been all the more meaningful.
Right.
But the sacrifice is next to meaningless if we don't know this character yet, and we don't.
And there's a note on Memory Alpha, the wiki, about how they realized that her character is one that could be disposable. That they, when they were writing this or working on this episode, and I wonder if they were, they're starting to think, we want to have the Kai figure to be the antagonist, and they looked at this character and said, "This is such a good character. This is such a character that could be very easily beloved. We don't want to make this character the antagonist. So let's create a new Kai who isn't quite so gentle and caring and flew over the cuckoo's nest." By the way, the actress who played Kai Wynn was in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, if people didn't know
Nurse
that.
Ratched. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's
Kai
let's
Wynn
make
was.
him.
Yes, Kai Wynn was. I was thinking, wait, was Opaka in that?
No, Kai Wynn. But they just, we need to have a different character in this position.
It's Deep Space Nine, as having religion being a important element in the storyline, was such an opportunity for science fiction. It was great. I'm glad that they did that and that it's not just dismissed. But they decided
we didn't
to
have
fall
anything
back
comparable until Ron Moore's Battlestar Galactica reboot.
Right. Yes, I agree. Although Babylon 5 had religion as well.
It had elements. It had elements, but it wasn't a central tenet of the show.
Right.
And it wasn't this is something here is real, which we have in both Deep Space Nine and in Battlestar Galactica.
But they unfortunately fell back into the tropes of, religious leaders tend to be hypocrites, and let's just make them that. And so there are very few religious leaders among the Bajoran people who don't end up being fundamentally hypocritical about their faith, whether they are just jerks or fundamentalists or
they end up dead, like Vedic Bareil.
Yeah.
But even he was he was a skeptic. He was
he was questioning. Yeah.
Yeah. He was basically a heterodox priest of the Bajoran religion. And it was just Opaka could have it's not that you can't have those characters, but you gotta have at least one who believes and is good and follows a faith and is holy according to those tenets.
The closest thing we have to that is Kira. And she is an imperfect model for that.
Right.
She's what we would call a person in the pew. I mean, an average person in the pew,
Yeah, she's not a leader.
Right. So, in any case.
So she's like the construction worker who goes out for a beer after committing acts of terrorism for years, it seems.
Yeah.
So, I do like the fact that when she finally gets to see her file that the Cardassians, that Gul Dukat had been keeping on her, she's offended that they describe her as being a minor member of minor.
Yeah, whose duties are limited to just running errands for the leaders.
Yep.
Which you given later on how Dukat talks about Kira, you wonder, if you want to retcon it, if he edited the file that he left behind just to tweak her.
Yeah.
When she found it.
Now, they don't say that was Dukat, but they say the previous prefect, who we know was Dukat.
Was Dukat.
But it was just, I can see him doing that, she's going to hate this.
It's kind of funny to think about that.
By the way, I wanted to comment on one other aspect of lost potential with Opaka. because she and Sisko, just like Sisko and Dukat have a special relationship, Sisko and the Kai, whoever the Kai is, have a special relationship because he's the emissary, she's the Kai.
Mm-hmm.
And imagine how much more interesting it would have. And they didn't really fulfill Sisko's role as the emissary. I mean, they did bring it in at the end, but they didn't explore its potential. What they should have done, and what Babylon 5 would have done, is give us some prophecies early on about what the emissary would do that we would then later see fulfilled or dealt with in one way or another. And they never did that, which they should have. But imagine that we had Opaka for the first 2 or 3 seasons as Sisko is learning to tentatively accept, and not very comfortably, his role as the emissary. And just when he gets comfortable with it, and with Kai Opaka, wham, he gets Kai Wynn and has to relearn to deal with this all over. And maybe I'm not the emissary, or don't want to be the emissary, if I've got to deal with this person.
Yeah.
And that later episode where a Bajoran shows up who claims also to be the emissary, and he has to deal with, wait, what are my feelings about not being the emissary anymore? That would have made that even more interesting, that conflict there. So yeah, I agree. That would have been interesting potential. So in any case, Opaka is aboard Deep Space Nine for the first time, unexpectedly. She wants to see the wormhole. She goes to a viewport to see where it would be in space, but you're not going to see it.
I love the passive-aggressive way she maneuvers Sisko in this.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, the wormhole would be out this window, but there's nothing scheduled to go through it today. And she just kind of smiles and looks at Sisko, and it's like, I'm sure something can be arranged.
I love that, how it's all it takes is a look. It's like a mom, just she looks at you. Like, oh, or a wife, because I've had that happen too. Oh, let me do that for you.
Well, and they even comment that she had never been off Bajor before.
Yes,
before this,
never even been off the planet. Yeah. So, and also in the same scene, you have the early season socially clueless Bashir, who just jumps in and volunteers himself to be invited on the trip. Like, I'd like to come along.
We need a doctor later on.
Yeah.
Yes. But it's that. It's interesting the different kind of Bashir we get in this first season. Kind of clueless.
I like in the scene where they're getting ready to go through the wormhole, and the Kai turns to O'Brien and says, "You have a child, don't you?" And he's like, "Yeah, I have a daughter. Please give this to her." And she takes off her necklace and hands it to him with no explanation.
Yeah,
and it's like, sign of suicidal ideation.
And get rid of your possessions.
and it's like, yeah, that's kind of what's going on here. She's not planning on coming back.
Yeah, it was.
On the other hand, imagine how treasured that would be.
Yes.
That necklace. I mean, the whole, marketers figured out correctly that limited time free stuff where, there's artificially constricted supply. You only get this for a limited time, but it's free and it's religious. That's good marketing. That's what makes Ash Wednesday such a marketing triumph. People will show up on Ash Wednesday who don't show up the rest of the time just so they can get the free stuff, the ashes on the foreheads.
And Palm Sunday too.
True.
Palm Sunday too.
Yep.
Gotta get those palms.
In a way, it's kind of a relic of the Opaka, who probably
it's a second-class relic.
Yeah, so good for Molly. Hold on to that. So, in any case, as they're going through the wormhole, she has this thing for this. She says to Sisko, she says, "Prophecy can often be vague, Commander. That's why we must test it." Which is interesting, as she says. So she's apparently received this prophecy and has decided to go test it, to follow through. What is it? What is this calling me?
See if it happens, because she at one point lets them say, "Okay, let's go back to the station," and then something happens to stop that, and so that's her testing the prophecy.
I also like that they don't come right out and tell us, "I had this prophecy and it said this." Like we just kind of get a sense of the outlines of what the prophecy must have been, but they kind of respect the audience a little. We'll figure it out, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that they an aspect of that. I also don't like how coy they are about it until right at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the Kai should have been a little more forthcoming about what's going on here, because it comes off as she's too coy. And in fact, that fits into a larger criticism I have of this episode, which is the Kai is too disengaged.
Mm.
She shows up at the beginning. Now, she has some good scenes. The opening scene where they're giving her the tour and she gives up the necklace and stuff, and she maneuvers Sisko into taking her through the wormhole. All that's good, but it's very understated. And then when they're going through the wormhole, this is like a religious experience for her. And so she is appropriately awed by it, and that's good. But then that's pretty thin stuff for an episode devoted to this character. She has almost no agency in it.
Right.
She's the MacGuffin that they're escorting through all this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not until 15 minutes before the end of the episode that she finally has some agency. And Kira, who has been extremely insubordinate to Sisko in this episode. I mean, just wow, he's repeatedly told her to shut up, and she won't in front of the aliens. And Kira's been extremely insubordinate. And 15 minutes before the end of the episode, Kira and the Kai are alone in a cave, and the Kai takes the initiative to give Kira some counseling about being able to let go of anger and things like that. And okay, finally the Kai does something. And that's it. And then we get this closing scene that's, again, it's an okay scene with the Kai where she accepts her fate and explains it from her perspective. But she has next to no agency in this. And for an episode, I don't want to see a living MacGuffin as the focus of an episode. I want a character with agency. I want to see why the Kai is the person to be in this situation. I don't want to just infer it. She should have been negotiating with these warriors alongside Sisko.
Or primarily, over Sisko. Yeah, it would have given her decisions, her sacrifice, and all of that much more weight. Why is she important here? So, speaking of the Kai and Kira, when Opaka is killed in the crash, we get this scene where Kira intensely grieves. And like you said, it's hard to feel that is earned because this is the second time we've seen this character. And we get that Kira is very religious, but I feel like we're supposed to feel something in that moment that we might not, because it's just sort of unearned, that moment.
They did the tell don't show mistake.
Yeah.
Where they told us that Kai Opaka was this very beloved leader throughout the entire religious leader throughout the entire occupation, and that's why
she was like
she was so important.
She was like John Paul II for Polish people during the Soviet occupation.
Right.
Exactly. But we don't see that. I mean, we can see in the character where she could be that, but we don't know that other than we were told that she was. And again, it was kind of a throwaway line of, oh yes, well, she was so beloved during, the occupation, and such an honor that she's here at the station, or something along that lines.
I wonder if she was intentionally modeled on John Paul, because this is 1993. The Soviet Union just fell.
Could have been.
A lot of people were attributing him to, his intervention to being key to that. That would be interesting to see.
Yeah, I think she is a reflection of John Paul II in various ways. But I agree with you that this is also new, and they've done so little with this character that it robs it of the full impact. I had an easier time accepting Kira's grief, but that's because I've seen 7 seasons of Kira. I know who Kira's character is. I know why this Kai would be important to Kira, and I can infer it. But if I was watching this for the first time, it would not ring as powerfully as it does if you know Kira.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So let's talk about the
by the
people on
way,
this.
I love how Kira is concerned about what the Pope's impression of her is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because she's insecure about the fact that she's this former terrorist, and she does not want the Kai to see her as just a violent person.
Right. There's that scene that you mentioned where the Kai kind of counsels her, and she's like, Opaka says, the reason you're insubordinate and trying to help these people is you see yourself in them. And Kira's trying to convince Opaka that she's no longer that violent freedom fighter, that she's a person without a conscience or a soul. But Opaka does that feeling her paw thing where she grabs her earlobe.
Yeah, they
and
do the ear
Kira
thing.
just melts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They originally, so I was doing some background reading, and originally the Kai was going to be male, and you were going to, and I'm so glad they changed all of this. But originally the Kai was going to be male, and he was going to be arrogant. He was going to be more like Win. And you were gonna, if you were visiting him, you would have to take off your clothes as a sign of respect, and then let him do deep tissue massage on your feet to do the paw thing. And
how would you do this on TV?
Well, it was a little ahead of Enterprise's time, but they basically did that on Enterprise. So I'm so glad that they changed all that. It's much better to just grab somebody's ear than make them take off their clothes and then feel their feet.
Did Gene Roddenberry write that?
Yeah, I was going to say there's somebody's thing had to do with feet, I think. I don't know.
That's very odd. Well, in any case, Kai's advice is do not deny the violence in you, because only by accepting who you are can you move beyond it. So that's sort of the 12-step sort of thing, do not deny who you are, accept, and then move on. And then she says that Bajor has much to learn from peace. We have to become peacemakers. And Kira says, I'm afraid the prophets won't forgive me. And Opaka says, well, the prophets are waiting for you to forgive yourself. And that's an interesting, a spiritual advice. I'm afraid God won't forgive me. Well, the first step is to be able to forgive yourself, and then ask for forgiveness.
Yeah, thank you, Hallmark cards.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, no, but there is a truth in that. Like,
there is a truth in that, but it gets expressed in ways that are sometimes not optimized.
And
sure.
I mean, we would say it's not so much forgiving yourself as it is like you mentioned the 12-step. Recognize that your own faults, your own failings, your own shortcomings, and then being open to receiving the forgiveness for them.
Right. Being willing to accept forgiveness, being willing to acknowledge that you can be forgiven. And I think that's
a good
I
way
think
to
that's where
phrase it.
Kira's at. Yeah.
The key to getting God to forgive you is not forgiving yourself. That's not the Jesus didn't come and announce the good news that it's okay to forgive yourself. It's kind of
no.
Yeah. But there is an element where, okay, God is willing to forgive you. Now suck it up and forgive yourself too.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, it's you could say that that's kind of what Kai is saying is like, you need to forgive yourself. The prophets, or in this case, have forgiven you, but you haven't forgiven yourself, and that's why you can't accept that you've been forgiven. So that would be So let's talk about the Ennis and the Null Ennis, and these two warring factions, these two tribes. Interesting, the names. They are the Ennis and the Null Ennis, and it's sort of takes me back to that the original series episode where they had the people who are white on one side and black on the other side of their face.
Let that be your last battlefield.
Thank you.
And don't spoil that one too much for Father Cory. He hasn't seen that yet.
No, I won't spoil it. But there's this the from the outside, it looks like there's not they're almost virtually identical from the outside, but for them
they're the same species. It's just they're wearing different uniforms.
But even down to their names, they're the Ennis and almost the not Ennis. These people and the not these people. And from a Starfleet Federation point of view, why are you guys so hating each other? It doesn't make sense to us as viewers. Like, we don't know why they hate each other so much. And given that it's been so long, they don't even necessarily remember why they hate each other so much. They just want to kill each other. So they've kind of set up this senseless war. By the way, I want to call out the leader of the NS is Golan Shell La, played by Jonathan Banks, who is, if you might recognize him as being Mike from Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. He's excellent in those. He's such a great actor, and I think he does a really good job here. I really like him. He's one of those guys who shows up a lot in as guest spots. But
by the way,
so
notice how this is and this is not terrible, but notice this is a very tropey conflict. Where they just hate each other so much that they can't think straight, and they don't even remember how it got started. Well, some say it was land, and some say it was this. And okay, in the real world, people who really hate each other know the basics of why they hate each other and will cite specific events as the cause, even if those events never happened. Because people need a cause to justify why we hate these other people so much. And so, like when after the Soviet Union fell, when Yugoslavia was falling apart, people were still in like Bosnia and places like that were bringing up battles and atrocities that occurred 800 years ago as the reason why we're fighting now. And so like these people have this memory that reaches back over 1,000, going on 1,000 years for this is why we're killing each other today. It's because of this thing their distant ancestors did 800 years ago. And in reality, the Innis and the Null Innis would have comparable things that they could cite as reasons why they're fighting and who struck first and who's the bad guy.
Yeah, Osama bin Laden kept calling us the Crusaders. I mean, that's reaching back pretty far. So, and there's also some other echoes of original series. We have the Day of the Dove, where the warring sides cannot truly die. If they get killed in battle, they are reanimated. In this case, it's a biomechanical technology that's reanimating them. And so they don't
explain it as clearly as I did in the intro, but it makes sense as, okay, this is a prison. You don't want people getting out of the prison. Make the microbes you're using to keep them alive so that they only live on this planet. So prisoners cannot get off the planet.
It's a twisted punishment.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's a hardcore.
Which also brings up Sisko's willingness to do a jailbreak, because at first he's like, I'll transport both of y'all off if you want. And it's like, dude, is that Starfleet really? I mean, and they do bring it up. I mean, Dr. Bashir talks to Sisko about it, and Sisko shuts him down really fast and says, I don't need you to interpret the Prime Directive to me, thank you. And then he gives some made-up justification that I don't fully buy for why it's okay to do this, to steal these prisoners off the prison planet. Because even if it's immoral that they're being kept here, you're not supposed to be making moral judgments about alien species and their ways. And this is a new race you have never encountered in the Gamma Quadrant, about whose strategic balance of powers you know nothing. I mean, you go over there and do the wrong thing, and I don't know, well, I mean, maybe you could start a devastating war.
Right.
And and Sisko's not taking any of that into account. So I don't think the first people you've met in going into the Gamma Quadrant and finding the first inhabited body and doing a jailbreak without even consulting Starfleet is an appropriate use of his command authority.
Yeah. I mean, they're constantly violating the Prime Directive in Star Trek. I mean, that's just one of the kind of the cliches about Star Trek. Right.
Yeah.
And they doing the moral thing. Because the moral thing says ignore it.
Yeah. Well, even in real politics, though, you would say, do not go into someone's territory and jailbreak a prison. Just don't do that. That's not the way to build interplanetary or international relations.
Right. And in fact, the solution here is not just to get these people off the planet. The solution is what Kai does, which is find peace, negotiate peace, bring about peace. Like, this is presumably a planet, which presumably is inhabitable in multiple places. Like, okay, you guys go over here in your room, and you guys go over there in that room, and this is what the parent does. You separate them.
And they even said that, both sides had many more people than we saw that were hiding somewhere.
Yeah.
Because they kept talking about bring out all your people. And
right.
So, okay, yeah, like you said, yeah, you guys go on this side, you guys go on that side.
Well, and presumably, like, again, all those, if another runabout comes, there's no way they're all fitting on a runabout, like even just the people we see. So
but you could evacuate them in stages.
Right. You'd have to bring other ships or whatever. But yeah, it's like, so I don't know. Maybe there would be consultation, but
there are obvious headcanons you can throw in here. Only this part of the planet is habitable, or this is one of these planets that it's tidal locked around its sun or whatever, and
it's host planet because it's a moon.
Yeah,
right.
Or host planet. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, that they're intentionally dropped here and artificially constrained, so that they have to remain in conflict.
But that's all headcanon. There's absolutely nothing in the story that supports that.
Right. So meanwhile, O'Brien and Dax have noticed that they are overdue and haven't reported in, so they go looking for them in another runabout. And it's like, why don't they get the same readings that drew Sisko and Kira to the planet that they did? Instead, they have to go on the needle in a haystack.
I wondered about that, and I think that they hint at the answer in the script, because the initial readings that draw Sisko and the Kai to the planet is a data transmission from a broken satellite in the network that is in the process of being repaired. So presumably by the time Dax and O'Brien get there, it's been repaired, and the satellite network is no longer leaking those data transmissions. I find it intensely amusing that when they discover the satellite network, the writers don't feel comfortable enough just saying to the audience it's a satellite network. So they have to have O'Brien say it's some kind of artificial satellite system. And almost all of those words are unnecessary. You could just say it's a satellite network, or even if you want to communicate that it's that it's an aggressive one, you could say it's a satellite defense network, or even it's the planetary defense grid. And you wouldn't have to worry about unpacking that for people today.
In 1993, we all knew about these SDI, Star Wars, the satellite defense network.
Within Star Trek, by this time, they'd had satellite defense grids and things like that. Heck, if you wanted to dumb it down, just say it's a bunch of attack satellites.
Yeah,
I mean, you don't even have to get into grid and network.
Right. So, meanwhile, Bashir manages to get the runabout's computers working, which is this evidence of his genetic engineering and his superior intellect, because he's just a doctor. But never mind. That's a little more headcanon. So I was reading, or not reading, but I was hearing about when they made the decision to have Bashir be genetically enhanced. And which I think was a great decision. It really helped his character a lot. But Alexander Siddig was not happy when he first learned about it. Not because of the decision itself, but because they made it like on the spur of the moment. And he had not been playing the character as I'm hiding the fact I'm secretly genetically enhanced.
Right.
And he would have wanted more time to build that into his performance before the reveal. But, and I agree, telling the character, look, you're hiding a desperate secret, just incorporate that somehow. That would have enhanced the setup for it on a certain level. But I'm even if they didn't give him enough lead time to build that in, I'm just glad they did it, because it explains so much about him, and it increases his character potential so much.
Yeah, they made up for that a little bit by the quality of the writing, how they wrote that episode, which explains some of his stuff from earlier.
That's also the thing about being really smart is you can hide, the fact that you are smarter than you are.
Yes, that's true. So
what I said just made no sense. I assume some listeners would get that.
Yeah.
You cannot hide the fact that you're smarter than you really are. You can hide the fact that you're smarter than you appear, which Columbo and the Second Doctor and various other people do regularly.
That's true. So the leader of the Knoll Ennis, when he's given Sisko's idea to bring everybody out for a negotiation, he thinks it's a trap, it's a ruse to get all his people out of hiding so that they can be killed. But I'm thinking, but you can't die, so what's the point of that? Like, because we're keeping score because you've killed our side more than your side? Like, like what? I mean, I suppose you don't want people to suffer. It's more pain, I guess. But
yeah, it's presumably it doesn't appear to be fun to die for these people. So it's like even if they'd come back, it's like do I have to do that today?
Yeah, right. Except they keep attacking. Like, if you don't want to die, and they seem to be very inept in their attacking, like a lot of them get killed because they don't use tactics anymore.
Yeah, let's say they called that out and basically said, we did tactics and we just found out it didn't matter because they just come back.
Right. So yeah.
I think there's a flaw in the writing in the negotiation scene because you've got Shala, the leader of the Ennis, pretty much on Sisko's side at this point and wanting to explore this idea, at least the way it's conveyed to the audience. He's on board with the idea of let's jailbreak. And they want to convince the leader of the other guys to jailbreak with them. And Shala seems to be helping Sisko to try to convince the other guy who is disbelieving that this is a real thing and thinks it's all some kind of trick. And then at a certain point, Shala just throws in the towel and says, as if I'd let any Knoll Ennis off this planet alive. Ha ha ha. Yeah. And he doesn't laugh, but he seems to, this is inconsistent writing. They haven't built up, they've portrayed him as too favorable to Sisko and his plan and the possibility of freedom to just ditch it like that. It's an inconsistency in the character's motivations. Because they neither, you could say that was all an elaborate ruse up to this point, because I just want to get close to you, Knoll Ennis, so I can kill you all again for today. But why? Who cares? If they really are immortal and if he's really not interested in getting off planet, who cares? Yeah, right. There's a motivation problem there. And if he's changing his mind, they don't give us reason for him to change his mind. And if this is all a ruse on his part, they don't give us justification for it being all a ruse either.
Right. Yeah, that is a flaw.
I guess I just kind of took it. He's like, well, fine, you don't want to do this, then I give up. I don't care.
Well, it would have been.
I'll kill you again anyways.
It would have been nice if he said that.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with you. It was bad writing, but that's kind of how I took it. He's just like, fine, if you're not going to go along with this, then I kill you. It's that simple.
So Bashir discovers that death is a trap, that these biomechanical engineering, these nanites, are only working on the planet, within the atmosphere of this planet. And so they realize that Opaka can't leave. But before they can tell her this, she's already decided that she's not going to leave, but that because she's going to stay and help these people find peace.
Yeah, and that's a nice move. It's nice to have her ahead of the game. So they're not, we're spared we've got some bad news conversation. And she's on top of it. That's some agency there. I like that. That's good. What I find implausible, and they could have, I think, done a better job with, is these planet-specific microbes. Because how does Bashir know they're planet-specific if he hasn't tried taking any of them off the planet? That's a serious question. I'm not dismissing it, because I can imagine he's getting tricorder readings, or, he uses the runabout's computer. He can be getting readings that say, these microbes need element X in their diet or they will die, and element X is super rare and is only found on this moon or similar moons. And I'm going, okay, great. If it's it needs to be something obvious like that for him to have detected it. The problem is, if it's something obvious like that, just feed them element X once you get back to the station.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I mean, you can create artificial environments to grow your microbes in and give people daily microbe injections if you need.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, it's not explained well. So one thing Bashir does propose, though, is that we could turn off the microbes and let them all die. Would that be the moral choice, though?
Kill them all now. I love this doctor.
Yeah.
Well, is it killing them or is it just letting them die?
I got the impression he presented it as the next time you die, that's it. It won't resurrect
that's what I got. Yeah.
Okay.
Which
I got a little bit more as if we take them, they will die, as meaning like quickly, not just live out a normal lifespan. Because if we're going to take the Kai off the planet and she's going to live a normal lifespan, well, that's what we were going to do anyway. The microbes aren't having any effect on the plot unless you die immediately upon being taken off the planet.
Well, and he didn't say that they were going to take the microbes. They were going to reprogram them.
Right.
That they would not resurrect. So the microbes would still be there keeping them alive until the next time they die.
I guess that does make a difference in whether it would be moral or not to turn it off. So if you turn it off and they die, then that would be immoral. But if you're turning it off so that they can live out a natural lifespan, that would be different, I guess. So in any case, Shala wants him to do it. And Kira disbelieves that the fear of death will end the fighting because it hasn't done so in other wars. But I'm thinking, yeah, but in other wars, the soldiers didn't experience death first. So, yeah, it might make a difference here. But in any case, Shala just wants to be able to kill his enemies once and for all. And that's how we end it. We don't end it with them all like holding hands and singing Kumbaya and we're all at peace now because the Kai has stayed with us. It's open-ended. Like, we don't know whether, we kind of hope that what she does will end the fighting, but we don't know for sure. So I kind of like that they leave it open-ended like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, Father Cory, any last thoughts on this episode?
No.
How about you, Jimmy?
No, I like Kai Opaka. She has some good scenes in this. I wish that we had gotten more with her, both in general. Like I said, I would have kept her around for at least 2 seasons, and given her a lot more agency. But she is a great character. The performance by the actress is really great, and I wish we had more screen time with Kai Opaka.
Okay, excellent. So as we wrap up, we want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the secrets of Star Trek, including Dennis B., Christopher P., Thomas V., Leonidas S., and Megan S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And we'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week. So that's it from us. We'd love to hear what you think of this episode of Deep Space Nine called Battle Lines. You can comment on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the Voyager episode Day of Honor. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you, Dom.
And Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thank you. And by the way, the next time that we return to Deep Space Nine, it's the storyteller.
Oh, I noticed that too.
Yeah, but till then, live long and prosper, even if it's through microbes that keep rebooting you.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, when you cease to fear death, the rules of war change.